shares or is compared to Allah in it.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back. The battle is over. The mushrikun, the polytheists, have fled and ran. 70 imprisoned and 70 dead. The first thing the Prophet ﷺ started with was to bury the Muslims who died in the battlefield, and there were about 10 to 14 of them. He buried them in their garments. He did not pray the funeral prayer. And this shows you one of the beautiful things in Islam. Islam is a very easy religion. It's a simple religion, that is. In the sense of, whenever you need something most, it becomes extremely easy. It's like air and water. We need air more than water. And that's why air is everywhere. Water, we need it, but not as much. That's why you have to put a little bit effort to get it. Likewise, marriage, death, it occurs all the time. In Islam, marriage is the easiest thing because you need it. You go to the guardian of a woman you want to marry, and if there's mutual acceptance, the father says, I'll give you my daughter in marriage with a dowry of so-and-so, in the presence of 2 or more witnesses. You say, I accept. And she accepts. That's it. She's your wife. No need for a wedding, no need for parties. Well, the sunnah is that you slaughter a sheep and you feed the guests as form of a party. And this is too much. Also, dying. Dying happens a lot in Islam. We grieve for our dead. We mourn for them. But it is not an endless process. If a person dies, immediately the sunnah is to wash him and then to clean him, perfume him, wrap him up in white clothes, and then take him to the masjid, take him to the mosque, pray the funeral prayer, which is 4 times you say Allahu Akbar, no bowing, no prostration, and then carry him to his grave, put him in his grave, bury him, end of story.
I once went to a funeral prayer once also, and there was a man who he just became a Muslim, and his relatives were still non-Muslims, and there was just a few Muslims they came to pray for him, maybe about 5 or 6, and on the other side there was maybe 40 or 50 people because of his previous life, and we performed a prayer within 5-10 minutes, and people were quite shocked. But when they came, they were throwing a ceremony,
flowers
and bringing bottles and saying we miss you. And it took some of their time, but they were actually amazed with the way it was like a form of dawah also.
Of course, of course. And they're astonished because those who are in grief are also not related to him. Those who are coming to mourn are not related to him. They are coming seeking the reward of Allah because one of the brothers actually died. And we remember the good things and they remember the bad things. They're coming with the bottles, with their flowers and with so on. And you can see in so many funerals, they're celebrating. Wine is given away and people are fully and nicely dressed. They have a party afterwards, and some of the funerals would come with a big convoy of cars, and it costs a lot, and the headstone costs so much, you have to engrave on it, and also some of them are followed by a musical band, and so on. This is completely un-Islamic. In Islam, he's dead. May Allah have mercy on his soul. End of story. If you are a relative, you're allowed to mourn for 3 days, not more. If you are a wife, you have to mourn for 4 months and 10 days. And this is only for the wife, with, of course, the conditions, this is not the place to discuss. So the Prophet ﷺ had the Muslims buried. In normal occasions, you would normally abandon your enemy on the ground. Why honor them? Why bury them? They're your enemy. But this is not the sunnah. The Prophet ﷺ never passed a dead corpse without burying it. And he tells us that to honor a dead person, you have to bury him. But, of course, because they were not Muslims, so the rituals connected and with the Muslim burial is different than the non-Muslims. Non-Muslims are not allowed to be buried in Muslim graveyards or with a Muslim. Non-Muslims are not to be washed or to be prayed upon, because this prayer is a form of intercession to Allah to forgive their sins. So you do not intercede for non-Muslims.
So we can't ask Allah for forgiveness for disbeliever person, then we can?
No, you cannot. It is forbidden for a Muslim to ask Allah for forgiveness for a non-Muslim. And this was manifested clearly in the hadith which was reported by Imam Muslim in Sahih, where the Prophet ﷺ once cried. So the companions asked him, why are you crying? So he said, I asked Allah to allow me, to give me the permission to ask for forgiveness for my mother, and He did not grant me that. So I asked Him if I can visit her grave, and He allowed me to do that. This means that, and also it's reported, or it's mentioned in the Quran, that it is not for the believers to ask Allah for mercy for the non or for the disbelievers. You cannot, even if they were relatives and close ones to you. So this is crystal clear. So the Prophet ﷺ came to the dead bodies, and he ordered them, the companions, to throw them in one of the wells and bury them. And he stayed there, the Prophet ﷺ, for 3 days in Badr. So to prove to the people that he did not win and he left. No, he won and he stayed. Anyone who wants to rebattle again, we're there, we're ready. And at the end of these 3 days, the Prophet ﷺ went to the prominent 24 of the mushrikun, of the polytheists, who were buried. And he came to them and he started calling them names. O Utbah ibn Rabi'a, Shayba ibn Rabi'a, Al-Walid ibn Utbah, Abu Jahl, Amr ibn Hisham, and so on. Umayy ibn Khalaf, Ubay ibn Khalaf, and so on. He started mentioning them one by one. And he said to them, we have found what Allah Azza wa Jal had promised us. Have you found what Allah Azza wa Jal promised you?
He's talking to the dead.
He's talking now.
And you mentioned, Shaykh, you mentioned the name Utbah ibn Abi Rabi'a.
Utbah ibn Rabi'a.
Utbah ibn Rabi'a.
Yes.
Yeah, which we heard earlier that you said to us that he objected basically in beginning of the battle to go
True.
there. Then they changed his mind. So could we learn a lesson from that, that sometimes, you know, a person which he could have mind, but because his friends could stray him or lead him to stray, could change him. So that it's a lesson for us not to go with bad people then?
Of course, bad company is bad influence. We are told in the Quran that on the Day of Judgment, a man would come and bite his hand in regret, saying, I wish I followed the Prophet ﷺ. I wish I did not obey my friend who was with me 24 hours, my buddy, because he himself had thrown me into hellfire. We have so many incidents that the influence of the peers did this to the people. It threw them into hell. Abu Talib, the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, his beloved uncle, who protected him, who raised him, who took custody of him after the death of his grandfather Abdul Muttalib and the father of Abu Talib. And he loved him more than he loved his own children. He protected him throughout the years. The whole 10 years in Mecca, he protected him and he tried his best that no one would harm him. The Prophet ﷺ tried his best to call him into Islam. And on the bed of death, while Abu Talib was dying, the Prophet came to him and told him, "Oh, uncle, say a word that I would intercede at the side of Allah for you with it. Only say La ilaha illallah. Say that there is no God worthy of being worshipped except Allah. That's all." And next to him was Abu Jahl and someone else, next to his bed. And they're saying, "Abu Talib, are you going to abandon the religion of your father, Abdul Muttalib, and your ancestors? Are you going to disobey them? Are you going to go astray from their way and path?" And the Prophet says, "Oh, uncle, just say it. Please say it." And at the end, the last thing he said before he died was that he was still on the religion of Abdul Muttalib. And he died as a non-Muslim. So, look at the influence of the peers on Abu Talib. And there are so many incidents. All of these mushriks were influenced by one way or the other. Not all of them wanted to go, but their arrogance, their readiness to accept Islam made them end in this tragic way. And this is an end that they deserve. It's what your hand did. So no one can blame, you cannot blame anyone else for that.
They say, yeah, so close, but still so far.
Yeah.
They almost came.
Oh, almost. This close. And there are so many of them came to their peers and said, "By Allah, what Muhammad is saying is not of this world. No way. We know the poets. We know the ways of literature. We are the masters of the language. This Quran is not from this world. And it cannot come from an illiterate person." And with so many, well, this we know now, with so many scientific facts that were only recognized 30 or 50, 40 or maximum 50 years ago. The Prophet ﷺ, 14 centuries, came with facts. And it's not like, what's the name of the book? Astronomus or Astrodomus or whatever?
Astronomist.
No, the book of this guy who made prophecies and came with a book of prophecies. He told so many prophecies. Some of them came true and lots of them were false.
Nostradamus.
Yeah, that's the one. I always forget his name. Yeah. The Prophet ﷺ came with facts, with theories, and none of them was proving wrong. And this is a very big difference. I believe that this is all the time we have for today's program. So inshallah, until we meet next time, fi amanillah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Mm-hmm.